thank you very much for inviting me to this workshop. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. 여러분 안녕하십니까? 저는 마에카와 유타카입니다. 저는 관세 가쿠인 대학교에 있습니다. 반갑습니다. Now, my paper today is titled "Cleansed by Jesus' Word Beyond the Baptism by Water in the Gospel of John." Now, I'm reading my handout. First, introduction. In the Gospel of John, there are a few expressions of purity or purify. Some Greek words meaning purify appear only in 2:6, 3:25, 13:10-11, and 15:3. Thus, purity in the Gospel of John has not been examined as a major theme in Johannine studies. There are reviews on purity studies in John's Gospel. Mira Steer evaluated the words relating purity in the whole Gospel of John. She claims that the Gospel of John shows a paradigm shift in cleansing. Cleansing is not merely a ritual in human culture. Thus, purity must be understood as a gift from God and Jesus. Cleansing should be regarded as a communication method and a work of personal relationship. Cleansing is not a cleansing of humans by themselves to approach God. Instead, God cleanses disciples through Jesus to purify them. Purifying by the word of Jesus is a new understanding of purity, which is only found in the Gospel of John. The purpose of cleansing is to build the eternal community between Jesus and his disciples, and the imitation of the foot washing of Jesus within that community. Still, it is correct that purity through the word of Jesus is peculiar to the gospel, and the purity is a gift from God. However, she discusses purity only within cleansing. Thus, she could not explain the extent of purity in the whole gospel and the Gospel of John. Further, she stresses God, the Father, who does not appear in the narrative of the Gospel of John. Thus, she moves away from the Gospel's whole story. The other researcher, maybe strong, reviewed chapter 13 and 15 in her article. Interestingly, these two researchers are dealing purity is both the female research. Continues. Her treatment of the narrative setting concerning purity in John is crucial. Considering the thoughts on purity in the Jewish religion, she argues that the gospel not only enters the community of covenant through purity, but also contributes to the missionary work of the Johannine community. Long's argument is based on an article by Richard Bauckham. Thus, her article is from the perspective of ecclesiology. One reason for that tendency may be that she only treats chapters 13 and 15, which are a word of Jesus for the disciples, namely for the inner community. Thus, understanding the whole thought of purity in the Gospel of John requires treating the whole examples related to purity. Furthermore, the arrangement of the related expressions in the Gospel is notable in understanding the thought on purity in it. A few more studies review the individual verses in the Gospel. You can see the footnote number 4. However, they have been insufficient to understand the whole thought of the expression in the Gospel of John. Therefore, this paper will investigate how purity is narrated in the plot of the Gospel of John. First, we examine the expressions that at first seem unrelated to the whole plot of the Gospel. Next, we investigate how the expressions are developed. And finally, we present a new perspective on this theme. Furthermore, there is an original idea that the disciples of Jesus are clean by the word of Jesus. This expression is not found in the other Gospels. There are some items for baptizing, such as water, fire, and the Holy Spirit. However, cleansing by the word is a strange expression. We will examine how this expression in the Gospel function in the plot of John's Gospel. To the text. In the Gospel of John, the words related to purity are used in the following 6 verses. The Greek text are from Nestor Arendt 28th edition, and the English translations are from the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. Now you can see the 6 places here. Maybe most of you know very well. One comment for here. If on chapter 15, verse 3, you have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. This word cleansed, interestingly, a New Revised Standard Version, updated edition, attached a note on cleansed. The same Greek root refers to pruning and cleansing. Yes. Now back to the text. Purity is first referred to as the water that the Jewish people used for the purification. Although no explanation of what this purification means is provided. Generally, at a wedding banquet, attendees use water to cleanse their hands before eating. The amount of this water is so large, 6 jugs, each containing approximately 100 liters, that this water shows the greatness of the miracle of Jesus, because he could change such an amount of water into wine, or many attendees of the banquet. This purification is a part of Jewish culture and has no connection with Jesus. Thus, it does not directly relate to the purity that Jesus provides. Moreover, purity is mentioned regarding the conflict between the Jewish group and the John the Baptist group in chapter 3. However, there is no description of the theme of their argument. In the following context, the baptism of John the Baptist is not narrated, but it is compared to the baptism of Jesus, not the conflict with the Jewish group. Regarding the expression in the text, this conflict of purity is between the Jewish group and John the Baptist, and there is no connection to Jesus. After the aforementioned verses, there is no mention for purity in the narrative for a while. Then this theme appears in the fruit washing story and the farewell discourse. In chapter 13, in the fruit washing story of Jesus, Peter asks Jesus to wash his whole body. Jesus answers that the one who had already been washed is entirely clean. Therefore, merely washing feet is sufficient for him. In this case, the one who has bathed is not limited to his disciples, namely, you disciples who have bathed, but refers to a general person. This difference is obvious in the following expression, and you are clean. You is a second person plural. Because if the one who has bathed includes the disciples, Jesus need not say, you are clean again. To bathe in this quotation is generally considered to be a baptism, although no description that the disciple of Jesus are baptized in the Gospel of John has been observed. In the farewell discourse, Jesus tells the parable of the true vine tree. Jesus says that the disciples have already cleansed through the word of Jesus. In this verse, the word of Jesus is generally regarded as his whole teachings, not a particular word or phrase. Jesus declared the purity of his disciples. However, when and where these disciples were purified remain unclear. Notably, this verse does not fit the current discourse of this parable. In this parable, attaching to Jesus is repeatedly stressed, and this attachment image is from the vine tree. Through the attachment to Jesus, one will bear fruit, not be the one who does not bear fruit. Nevertheless, this image is not connected to purity. The following has no content on purity. A related word, defilement, miaino, is used in chapter 18. In this case, in this scene, at the trial of Jesus, the Jewish people did not enter Pilate's headquarters, attempting to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover meal. This attitude might be related to the Jewish purification custom in chapter 2 in the Gospel. However, to purify and to differ. Thus, we don't examine this verse in this paper. 3. A discussion. The theme of purity in the Gospel of John appears in the beginning part of the first half, that is, the chapters 1 to 12, and the second half, chapters 13 to 20 of the Gospel. That is, in chapters 2, 3, 13, and 15. 3.1, chapters 2 and 3. In the public life of Jesus, which appears in the first half of John's Gospel, there are two purifications in the Jewish religion and by John the Baptist. These two purifications are not related to the main plot of the Gospel. Thus, they are supplementary explanations. In chapter 2, Jesus changes the water for purification to the best wine. An explanation for the Jewish rites for purification might be that this phrase provides information to readers unaccustomed to this Jewish custom. This explanation that the water used for the purification for the Jewish rites was changed into an improved material implies that the action of Jesus is better than Jewish custom. The beginning part of the John's Gospel repeatedly announces who will transcend the Jewish religion. John chapter 1, 17 indicates that Moses, a prophet in the Jewish religion, receives a law, and through Jesus Christ, grace and truth were provided. The prologue and John the Baptist repeatedly inform the appearance of the Son of God. These descriptions also imply who will surpass the Jewish religion. The sign, miracle, in the story of wedding of Cana explains this theme through a change in concrete material. Chapter 3 reports a conflict between the Jewish people and the disciples of John the Baptist, although details are not provided. Neither Jesus nor his disciples are mentioned, and not even a Jew is mentioned. Additionally, after mentioning this conflict, the disciples of John the Baptist have a discussion with John the Baptist. The individuals in this conversation insist that Jesus should be prioritized over John the Baptist. Subsequently, 3:22 says that Jesus and his disciples provide baptisms. Considering this context, the conflict on purification in chapter 3 should not be considered a comparison between Jewish purification and the baptism of John the Baptist, but on the baptism of Jesus and the baptism of John the Baptist. The Jewish perspective does not distinguish between these two baptisms. We do not intend to argue that a Jew in this verse was a historical person and that this person asked such a question. The purpose of this episode is to compare Jesus and John the Baptist. This comparison is necessary to explain the difference between the baptism of the John the Baptist group, who continues their mission at the time of the reader of John's Gospel, and the baptism of a Christian group. Thus, the discussion in chapter 3 should be considered a conflict between Jesus and John the Baptist. Both stories describe a conflict between Jesus' group, and namely Christian Church, and the other groups, Jewish people and John the Baptist, and indicate that Jesus' group is superior to the other two groups. 3.2, chapter 13 and 15. In the second part of the John's Gospel, purity appears in the inner discourse of Jesus to his disciples. That is, the object of his discourse differs from that in the two aforementioned places. In the second part, purity is related to Jesus' inner circle, not the outer circle, namely as Jewish people or John the Baptist group. Chapters 13 and 15 assert that the disciples of Jesus have already been purified. Chapter 13 states that the disciples have already bathed. Does this statement refer to a baptism? If this verse means that the disciples were baptized, when were they baptized by Jesus? The baptism of disciples by Jesus is mentioned in neither John's Gospel nor the Synoptic Gospels. The calling story of Jesus' disciples in John's Gospel indicates that the first two disciples of Jesus were the disciples of John the Baptist. Therefore, they were baptized by John the Baptist, as well as Jesus was baptized by him. Thus, we pose two questions. Did Jesus perform baptism to his disciples other than that of John the Baptist? And were disciples subsequent to these two John the Baptist disciples, or Andre and unnamed one? In John's Gospel, interestingly, Peter is also included in the former group. Former groups are also right, so next to the first two disciples. Back to text, baptized by John the Baptist or Jesus. There is no information on the baptism that Jesus' disciples received. However, the bathing or baptism of the disciples seems evident in chapter 13. This problem regarding the baptism of the disciples reflects the situation of first century Christianity, where the custom of baptism was commonly practiced. The disciples of Jesus were baptized as a matter of course. The claim of Jesus that his disciples were entirely clean so that only their feet should be washed compelled us to reconsider the meaning of the foot washing. This foot washing is a symbolic action. Washing each other's feet represent serving each other. The meaning of purification is not explained in detail in this verse. Instead, we highlight that this verse insists on an attitude toward other members of the community because the members are already clean. Thus, what does this cleanness mean? Before we argue to this point, we review the content in chapter 15. In chapter 15, Jesus says to his disciples that they have been cleansed by his word. Cleansing by the word, Greek logos, seems crucial because of the insistence that the word of Jesus cleanses the disciples. The Gospel of John reports that Jesus and his disciples were baptized by water, but in the discourse of John the Baptist, Jesus would baptize with the Holy Spirit, chapter 1. Thus, what is the relationship among water, the Holy Spirit, and the Jesus' word? In the Gospel of John, this relationship is unclear. First two elements, water and the Holy Spirit, are also recorded in the Synoptic Gospels. Thus, they must be from other tradition in the church. cleansing by Jesus' words is unique to John's Gospel. In the Johannine tradition, not only water or the Holy Spirit, but also Jesus' word cleans the disciples. Thus, Jesus' word is emphasized in John's Gospel, namely, who hears Jesus' word will be cleansed. This idea must be a commonly held concept in the Johannine community, and it distinguishes them from other Christian communities. Thus, how are baptism and the Holy Spirit related? Notably, Jesus' baptismal activity has been reported. In the farewell discourse, the Holy Spirit is also described as a paraclete or advocate who will be with disciples after the ascension of Jesus and inform them of the truth. Because the disciples will receive the Holy Spirit after Jesus' ascension, at the story's time in chapter 15, that has not occurred. Therefore, the baptism using the Holy Spirit cannot be completed in chapter 13. The purification by the word of Jesus in chapter 15 indicates the importance of the word between the baptism using water and the baptism using the Holy Spirit. The purification by Jesus' words does not need physical water to purify someone. This idea has a connection to other episodes related to water in John's Gospel. Purifying water at the wedding of Cana will no longer be necessary. The living water that the Samaritan woman wanted is crucial for life, and living water flows from Jesus in chapter 7. All these occurrences deny the physical water and explain the water that Jesus provides. Furthermore, the purification by the word of Jesus criticized the baptism in the other group. Both the Jewish bathing custom and the baptism of John the Baptist are criticized. For the Johannine community, baptism not only the physical water, but by the word of Jesus leads to salvation, and they claim that they have received such of truth. It is the purification of Jesus' words that transcend Jewish purification customs or the baptism using water. Some more. 3.3, a plot of John's Gospel and purification motif. In this section, we examine the sequence of the episodes that contain the purification motif, namely how that motif is developed in the plot of the whole Gospel. In the chapter 1, as a precondition, Jesus' power is offered. John the Baptist tells that Jesus will perform the baptism with the Holy Spirit, contrary to the customary baptismal performance using water. Then the reader of John's Gospel is provided the explanation that Jesus will change something regarding to baptism using holy power. In chapter 2, the water in the purification in the Jewish religion has been replaced with wine, something different from water. Thus, water for purification is no longer necessary. Chapter 3 informs us that the baptism of John the Baptist, which Jesus also received, is inferior to the baptism of Jesus. On the basis of these two chapters, the reader understands that Jewish purification using water and the Baptist baptism are surpassed. Water's physical power has a new meaning in chapters 4 to 7. In chapter 4, Jesus tells the Samaritan woman that living water becomes a spring within human beings. In chapter 5, the power that the water of pool at Siloam contains is exceeded by the word of Jesus. In chapter 7, Jesus declares the living water again, which will flow from Jesus. In chapter 9, a person born blind is given mud in Jesus' spit, at a type of water, and washed at the pool. At first, the pool of Siloam seems to have the curing power, but the mud that Jesus spread on him was necessary before the water cured the person. The reader now realizes that Jesus provides the water something different from usual one. In the foot washing story, Jesus uses the physical water to cleanse his disciple. However, the cleansing is not only a formal action because they were already cleansed. The cleansing for the disciples was performed by the word of Jesus. Jesus' word or the Holy Spirit will be given as a paraclete, which will be sent from the Father and will tell the truth to the disciples. At the cross, when Jesus died, a soldier picked Jesus' side, and water and blood flowed from this spot. The water and blood should be considered as the living water, thus a living water. Thus, Jesus' word in chapters 4 and 7 are fulfilled. Furthermore, the disciples received the Holy Spirit after the resurrection of Jesus in chapter 20. Jesus' word in the farewell discourse is also fulfilled. They are cleansed by the Holy Spirit through Jesus' breath. In this manner, the former purification by water is replaced by the purification by the word of Jesus. This theme is narrated in order in John's Gospel, and its climax is the Holy Spirit given by the resurrected Jesus. Traditionally, the purifying item is water. Subsequently, John's Gospel insists that the word of Jesus purifies the disciples. Finally, the Holy Spirit purifies again, as John the Baptist says in chapter 1. Conclusion. Scholars have ignored the purification theme in the Gospel of John. We examined the details of the expression and found that the theme is notable in the Gospel. The purification in John's Gospel forces the reader to reconsider traditional purification or baptism because the water for Jewish purification was changed to wine, and Christian baptism differs from that of John the Baptist. According to the Gospel of John, purification will be performed not by the water, but by the word of Jesus. Moreover, after the resurrection, the Holy Spirit that Jesus provides will purify the believers. Giving the Holy Spirit is a fulfillment of the word of John the Baptist, that the one who baptized with the Holy Spirit will appear. The purification by the word of Jesus is placed between the baptism using water and that using the Holy Spirit. The Johannine community realized that John's purification surpassed the previous purifications. The baptism by Jesus' word and with Holy Spirit is peculiar to the Johannine community. Of course, following Jesus or his word was often being mentioned, but purification by Jesus' word is a new insight. The preference for Jesus' word or discourse is characteristic of John's Gospel, such as long discourses, monologues, or the farewell discourse. The evangelist of the Gospel or the Johannine community stress Jesus' word in general, and this tendency also appears in the purification theme. Such an understanding of purity is not common in early Christianity. Most communities continue to baptize using water as it is performed in 21st century churches. Purification by the word or with the Holy Spirit is an interesting thought in first century Christianity. Thank you.